Yes, Avatar is still crashing at the box office compared to the prior film. I know that's not what they're saying all around the internet today, but it's so sad, so bad, that we have the receipts and we're bringing them your way. Today, we'll show you how it's really doing and why it should be cause for real concern for Disney and James Cameron. Sound the alarms. Avatar is falling. Hello, folks, and welcome back to the channel that keeps calling with new entertainment news you need to know delivered in a way that the others simply won't. On a platter of chatter, served up with the truth, a capital T. As we dive in today, folks, click the like button, drop a comment down below, let us know your thoughts. And if you see the hype button, the time is always ripe to hit the hype. Well, it's spin cycle number 9, ladies and gentlemen. The media have lost their minds trying to defend this thing, or is perhaps what we're seeing the talking points of Burbank being pushed out on all of us. Now, you may love Avatar. I don't know if you do. I don't care if you don't. I'm just here to tell you that the numbers they're giving you are not real. Global Box Office says Avatar Fire and Ash overperforms again and makes $25 million on Christmas Day. It's now tracking to absolutely crush every industry estimate, earning $70 million this weekend, a drop of only 20%. How bonkers is this? It's now literally outgrossing The Way of Water's second weekend, which scored $63 million in 2000. What? Spider Druggy Girl is doing this? What? Variety says, box office, Avatar Fire and Ash crosses $450 million ahead of Christmas holiday. Rebecca Rubin says it's the greatest thing since sliced cheese. But folks, prepare yourselves, for we have the truth. Indeed. All right, from thatparkplace.com, no, Avatar Fire and Ash hasn't suddenly taken off at the box office, but the media hype spin machine has. Get ready, because we got the stuff. We'll just skip the paragraphs and go straight into it. You ready for this? Avatar Fire and Ash, the first 7 days, worldwide, $450 million. Congrats to it. And listen, when we're talking about this, we're not saying that it's a bomb. We're not saying it's a disaster. I'm saying compared to the last one, this is not where it should be. Because look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Avatar The Way of Water, first 7 domestic days, worldwide, $609.7 million versus $450 for this one. Now, they can spin this however they want to, and they can tell you, it's legging up better than the last one. I don't care. It's $450 compared to $609. You bunch of ninnies, tell the truth. It's a 40% gap domestically. That is at the box office in terms of numbers. That isn't even, we're not even talking about like the actual ticket sales, because that's worse, because the cost of a movie has risen, which means it's more than a 40% drop in attendance. But they don't want you to know that. They won't tell you. And then you got down here, 22% drop internationally. Again, I can't tell you what China's going to do. China has this it's a whole different system. I understand North America, Europe, Latin, and South America. I don't get China, okay? Domestically, though, this thing is cooked. Now, I want to go down and I want to show you how they're playing this, okay? How are they making it be that there is that it's legging out better than the second weekend? And I have no emotional angst for this film. I want you to know that. I don't care. If it does, listen, if I'm wrong and this movie does great, great. The theaters need it. I'll celebrate. I will get on here and eat crow happily and say, we need this for theaters to survive. But here's how the media is tricking you, or trying to, unsuccessfully, because you have the highest IQ on the internet. Although a 22% drop internationally isn't terrible, the domestic importance of Avatar is in full collapse and could get worse. Claims that the film is holding better than the prior movie are using deceptive marketing strategies, and maybe those talking points are making their way from 20th century itself. Articles claim that the second weekend is likely to only see a 30% drop, and as you saw, now they've changed it to 20, unlike Way of Water. What they don't tell you is that in 2022, Christmas was the Sunday of the second week, meaning that Christmas Eve and Christmas Day took up the weekend, and there is no worse day for movie theaters than Christmas Eve. And everybody knows why, right? Because we're all helping Santa. You got it? This year, the second weekend has no such issue. Thus, that's the statistical truth they can use to hide what is reality. And it's actually worse than this. I need to lose soundbite of, it's worse. Because, folks, Not only did the second weekend for Way of Water have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day for the Saturday and Sunday, but this year, guess what? Christmas on a Thursday. And that means they're counting Wednesday, which is Christmas Eve, Thursday, which is Christmas Day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as a weekend. And then they're comparing it to a 3-day for Way of Water. That's the way they've managed to prop this thing up and make you believe that it has legs. She's got legs. They're ZZ topping Avatar and pretending it's real. Culture, I hand it to you, man. This is really something to see. It's down 40% at the domestic box office, and they're acting like it's the biggest thing ever. It's a phenomenon. No one can believe how it's performing. It goes on and on and on. It's not the Energizer Bunny, Culture. It's not.
No. Look, this film was destined to have a rough go. I think that a lot of people's enthusiasm for film has been drying up over the course of the last 5 years. This film series has run its course. I think even James Cameron had a sense of that. But all the prediction models, and again, if we had access to the Palantir data, we'd be even more well-informed about the fact that the enthusiasm for this film is non-existent.
Well, now, hang on, Coach. You can't just throw a word out like that and not explain it to the audience. What is the Palantir data? What are you talking about here?
Palantir tracks everybody and everything in the entire world. It's a giant accumulator of your information, in addition to being not just a data broker, but a data analyzer. And Palantir is being used across many, many industries now to make plans and to understand models so that they can market directly to humans, each and everything, including, talking points for politicians and, otherwise, purchased goods and things like that. So they make it their business to understand the populace as a whole. So when they analyze something, and believe it or not, that you can acquire some of this information, especially the film industry probably relies on it. They kind of get a sense of what's going to do well and what's not. So, if you kind of look at where markets go and things like that, a lot of it's driven by Palantir data. But we'll set all that aside.
I'll come back to you in just a second, Culture. Tom has been absorbing this vociferously. Tom, I'm being stuck in a position that I don't want to be in. I'm being forced to be in this spot where it makes me look like I'm anti-Avatar, and I'm not. I don't care. I just don't care. I want the theaters to do well, but I'm being put in the spot where I have to correct this and say, no, it's not doing well because the media keeps lying about it, and now we have to say the truth. And the truth is, it's doing fine, and most films would love to be Avatar, but if you're James Cameron and you've had both of the prior ones make $2 billion, I don't think you can be happy with this.
You're not wrong. There's a caveat to this whole thing. What's funny about this is they're saying it made $25 million on Christmas Day, right?
Right.
That's not a big a success as they're pretending it is. If you share what I got going on in the background here real quick, just swap it out. This is the top films for what they made on Christmas Day.
Oh my gosh.
Star Wars,
Tom, you're a rock star. Go through this.
The Force Awakens made $49 million just on Christmas Day alone the year it came out. So that means it's done twice as what Avatar has. You got to go all the way down to Way of the Water, which did $5 million more than what Ash and Fire. So this is not looking good for Avatar. Now,
okay, scroll down, Tom. Let's see that. I see it. I see it. Okay.
Yeah. See, yeah. So this is, they don't have Ash and Fire on here yet. So it would come in right below episode The Last Jedi and probably Rogue One. It would come in right between there probably. So you're looking at movies that are still almost a decade old that it's barely beating, right? That's not good. That is not good at all. For like you said, for any movie in the world to be doing the type of numbers that Avatar is doing, that's great. But how much did this one cost? Because I know the last two were expensive as hell too.
The reported amount, because they filmed, if you can even call it, right. The reported amount is $400 million in production, right? And then we would assume that it's $200 million in marketing, print, and ads. So you would say 1.2 billion is what it needs to break even. It's going to break even. I think it's going to surpass that. But if it holds where it is right now with a 25% approximate drop from the last one, it's going to make about 1.5 billion. And I actually think that's probably optimistic, because I think that this movie is kind of hard to watch and a little bit more dire and negative, and it features all kinds of the things that we see that drop box office expectations. But the media is determined to trick you and say, oh, no, it's doing even, the second weekend versus the second weekend and the last one. No, way better.
Well, let's forget the box office for a second. Let's go where the real money is. How many of you guys did Santa bring Avatar toys for the kids this year?
No banshees and stockings. Is that what you're saying? Uh-huh. Got a point there, Tom. That's a great point. No kid is getting Avatar toys this Christmas.
It doesn't have any real big cultural impact, especially in the U.S. Like, I know people get really aggravated when you bring that up, but like, seriously, what kid do you see running around with an Avatar toy? Now, you could go and see a kid run around with a Spider-Man toy, something like that, or, but you'll never see a kid running around with an Avatar toy. And I don't think this year is going to be any different than any other year. It just doesn't, it's not.
That's a great point, Tom. Why, though?
Stay.
Why do kids not have little blue Avatar people as their action figures running around? Why don't they have Jake Sully's?
Honestly, they're not kids' movies.
Well, this last one's definitely not a kid's movie.
Well, see,
but it should hit that Star Wars audience, though, Jonas.
There's a more important part here is the dad needs to be proud to have gone to see the movie if he's going to take his kids to go see a kid movie. And I think these are just weird enough that you get a lot of guys who just don't want to admit that they watch this movie or are advocating for this movie. Because it's not like you go in there and it's like, yeah, you should have seen the scene in the end where he chopped the guy's hand off and all that kind of stuff. There's none of that in this movie. So you get to the third one and I'm not saying finally, like I'm glad that it's there. You get to the third one and you finally have a femme fatale in this series, if you want to call the weird drug addicted or drug pushing lady.
The old sex spider is what I'm going to call her.
Sure. And you also get Quaritch, who upgrades as a villain each one of these movies. I thought the second one was better than the first, but if homework is the problem, 3 hours of a very slowly paced film, and then another 3 hours, I think that's very off-putting to a lot of the audience. And having heard that the third one is a lot of what the second one is, that's fine. Movies can be that way, but it can be off-putting to the audience. 6 hours at least, not counting 30 minutes of previews if you watch them in theaters in order to catch up on these films. I think that's the problem with Avatar right now. And you're not seeing necessarily anything new at the box office. I actually enjoyed the film for the most part. I'm probably not going to go see it again. But I don't understand why these films are as popular as they are. I understand that they are popular, but I don't understand why.
Well, and it feels like to me they've got to be hitting that Transformer / Mission Impossible level already, right? Like, and this is the thing, it's like, you're kind of right, Jonas. Like, none of these movies have I heard anybody come out and say, like, you got to see the Wampa scene, or you got to see the Jabba the Hutt sequence. Like, there's nothing that people are coming out and saying that this is a good reason to go see this movie. I mean, they're really just the same thing as the last. Kind of like, I couldn't tell you. I barely remember the first one, and I didn't care, right? Like, that was the thing. It's just like, is it bad? No. But to me, it didn't live up to James Cameron's standards. It's like, yeah, they spent the money on it. Yeah, it looks fancy, but this is the most unoriginal thing I've ever seen James Cameron do.
Man, that's saying something, isn't it?
Isn't it?
The James Cameron who made Terminator and Terminator 2 and
Right.
Aliens and True Lies, and none of that is what you see in Avatar. I get it. Avatar is a work in originality on some level, but at some point we have sacrificed, or James Cameron has sacrificed, one of the most prolific filmmakers, one of the biggest hit makers in Hollywood, to do the same movie over and over again.
And over again, yeah.
Culture,
He's been making the same movie for 20 years, exactly.
Right.
Sorry.
And what is he going to do? Is he going to bring in someone else to direct the next one? I highly doubt that.
Culture, we cut from you earlier. You had a great point to make. I'd like to get back to it now. What say you when it comes to Avatar and the media's attempt now to spin this dramatically? I mean, this really is one of the most ham-fisted efforts I've ever seen for them to try to get something over the finish line. And I suspect, Culture, it's because theater's going to die in January and February if this film doesn't have legs.
I would suggest that you're correct. I think we're looking at a very sad January, February, and March, because the first time anything that's worthwhile or worthy of people's attention, it doesn't show up until end of March, and most likely people won't really return to theaters until April. Tom is famous for labeling January and February as F word, months for the theaters.
I didn't make that up though.
Oh, you didn't? All right. Well, fair enough.
No, that's been a thing for years. It's been known as FU January.
Yeah.
And we don't give an F March, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. Yeah. I mean, and this is another reason why a lot of studios will dump horror films into months like that where it's going to be slow. I mean, it's why you see horror films not in October. I mean, it would make sense, and Tom and I've had this discussion before, where, you would think every horror film is going to be released in October. It makes the most sense, except it doesn't. There's opportunities everywhere in the calendar. And right now, January, February, March, those are opportunities for almost anything at this point.
There is a little competition out for this Avatar, because normally we see everything get the heck out of its way.
Yeah.
We did see SpongeBob go up against it, Five Nights at Freddy's, although it did finally hit streaming now already.
Yeah.
That did okay for its first initial part of its run there.
What else? Marty Supreme. Marty Supreme.
And those are actually movies that have they have competition. Everything has been so equalized. The special effects are secondary now. We're used to seeing things like Avatar on the screen. So now it has to be story. And the story is there.
Well, that's my other thing too, Jonas.
But go ahead.
No, I've just been saying that for a while since the second film was like, what is James Cameron bringing to the table with these new films? Nothing. That's why Avatar 1 was such a huge success. It had nothing to do with the story. It had nothing to do really with the special effects so much, because we'd already seen special effects like that. It was the fact that he was reintroducing this, 3D element to it, and it wasn't the red and blue crap, right, that we were used to for years. It was bringing back that classic 3D that we hadn't seen since Friday the 13th and Jaws, or you got to go all the way back to the 1950s and 60s. And real 3D was kind of this technology that was they were reinvigorating it again. Now they could mess with it a little bit more. With computers, you could realign things a little bit better and make it look better. So with Avatar being this spectacle at that time, it was a big deal. But now you get to part 2. What is it you're adding to the equation? Nothing. High frame rate. Well, they did that with The Hobbit, and everybody hated that. Yeah. And he's brought nothing to the table with Avatar 3. Absolutely nothing new. So at this point, it's grown stagnant. There's no cultural impact because it's not changing anything. Usually movies have more of a cultural impact, not just because there's something good about them. And I'll give you a great example. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Changed the industry as a whole. If it wasn't for that movie, you wouldn't have gotten, movies like everything from Back to the Future Part 2 through Jurassic Park, right? Like that was that stepping stone we needed. And it was a good movie, yes, but it was also a milestone in special effects. And that's what James Cameron used to do. Terminator 2 was a great example of that. The Abyss was a great example of that. Even The Abyss, as brought up in the chat, was probably James Cameron's only flop. Because it didn't do bad at the box office, but it just didn't make the amount of money it needed to make.
Yeah, so, it was groundbreaking. No, I was adding to what you're saying, Tom. That film was groundbreaking. Abyss offered so much new tech we'd never seen before. It was unbelievable.
And that's what George Lucas used to bring to the table, too. And that's why he was griping about the new Star Wars films. He's like, they didn't bring anything new. No. There was nothing new there.
No, let me show you guys real quick the story that nobody is covering. That it must now be a part of this. Tom, you may not even know about this. I can't wait to show everybody. We've briefly discussed this in the past. It's disgusting what Disney is doing to theaters. Because you may be saying, okay, well, what's preventing Avatar? Why has it got a 40% drop at domestic? You might say, why did SpongeBob come in and do so poorly? Like it's a kid's film at Christmas. Why? David outperformed SpongeBob. Okay, good enough. And people are saying that Disney's knocking it out of theaters and that it could do 20 million more if only Disney would let it. And guess what? They're right, because ladies and gentlemen, this is the story that everybody needs to know. Take a look at this out of the numbers. What is it that is killing theaters? Why is Avatar underperforming? Why can SpongeBob not find any water? Look at Ella McKay on this list from the numbers. Look at Ella McKay. What day is this? This is December 24th. This is Christmas Eve. even to this day, Ella McKay is being forced to stay in 2,500 screens by Disney.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Tom, do you know how much it made on average per theater per day?
That means that like less than one person is going to
showing.
$18.
Average of like what? One person
per showing. Yeah. Or less. Or less. And look, I mean, if you make $31 a day, you got a problem. But when you look at
2,500 screens, culture.
Yeah, I know, but look around. It's not the only one out there that is in too many screens. And again, a lot of that's forced by Disney. If you have something breaking wider than 3,000 screens, that's ultra wide. You're hitting it. But Disney movies, when they hit theaters, they are signed into contracts that can be as long as 3 weeks or longer, right, Tom? And at this particular level, at 4,000 screens or more, you're really asking for disaster. I mean, Angel Studios was lucky to get 3,100 screens, and it's added screens along the way. Whereas Anaconda, which is a Sony Pictures film, that broke into 3,500 screens. Marty's Supreme, which is one of those independent weird films from A24, that's in 2,600 theaters. So as you look at a brand new film that Film Threat's actually saying is something you should see, which is Song Sung Blue, which features Hugh Jackman as Neil Diamond, essentially. That's only in 2,578 screens. So they're forcing films into these super wide releases that have held the theaters hostage. Yeah, Disney specifically.
Disney is killing theaters this Christmas season. There's no other way. David should be on like 3,500 to 4,000 screens based on how much it's making. SpongeBob should be on more screens. Give Zootopia. You have forced theaters, Disney, to lose money because $18 per day does not pay for the projector, let alone the theater. And the opportunity cost is insane.
Pay for the hourly wages of the attendants, which is probably not that high. I think that happened because Ella McKay is a James L. Brooks movie, and James L. Brooks is heavily tied to The Simpsons, which is something that Fox views as a cash cow. And so I would be willing to bet that there was something in there that is relation with James L. Brooks.
But there is something to this because I remember talking to a small theater owner about this very subject with Disney. And that was the one thing that they were griping the most about was that Disney and their friggin' contracts and how ironclad they are and how they can't do anything without Disney's okay, right? Because I can't remember what movie it was at the time, but there was some Disney movie out that was crap. And there was another film that was doing really well that they couldn't switch into their bigger theater because Disney had forced them to put, I think it was Wreck-It Ralph 2 was out at the time. They had forced them to keep that in when whatever other children's movie that Universal or somebody had put out was doing so much better, but they couldn't move that into the big theater because they were stuck keeping Wreck-It Ralph 2 in that big theater, even though there was 3 people on average going to see it every time.
Same thing with Last Jedi, that they like if you had a theater with less than 6 screens, at least 3 or 4 of them were going to be The Last Jedi. That was it. And so
it's not just Disney. That started back in the day, but they're the worst offenders, right?
So, Lauren, your thoughts as we get ready to wrap up on Avatar, Fire and Ash going into January, February, March. Theaters have nothing. And I listen, I don't blame Disney and 20th Century for trying to spin this. I just hate that the media is doing it too. But I kind of get why they're, what they're up to. I think they're looking at existential crisis right now across the film industry.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. I don't think they'd be putting these stories out unless they were trying to gin up more box office. The proof is in the pudding after the movie's out, and you see what the final takes are. I think Jonas probably said it best when he said, yeah, I saw it. It was fine. I'm probably not going to watch it again. If that's what the audience is taking out of the movie, then you're not going to be hitting those giant crushing numbers that they want to be hitting. It'll do fine. But to me, the Avatar movies come across like it's just James Cameron's vanity project. He's made blockbusters in the past. He's got a sterling reputation, but this is a thing that he personally has wanted to do and invested a lot of himself into. But it probably doesn't justify the amount of pomp and circumstance they're giving these movies because they're not as popular as his stuff when he was really crushing it.
I will say, in Avatar: Fire and Ash, if it wasn't a 3D movie, I would have brought my laptop in with me to get some work done.
Well, that's a huge problem. Again, because you're losing 4 hours of your life with traffic. And I say that not just because, previews are now a half an hour long plus, or, it does take you a while to get to your, local, multiplex. But the film is too long. You know what? Odyssey is going to be too long. And we're starting to run into that with the vanity of these filmmakers. Now, Cameron knew this was going to be a disaster because he was already talking about maybe not making 4 and 5. I'm sorry, despite the fact that the first act of this next film is already shot, do we need it? Disney's going to have to ask that question and then answer it. And you know what? If this film falls short of $2 billion, there's no good answer that you can give Disney as to why to make more of these.
Well, the problem culture is these things cost, like we said, the break even is probably 1.2 billion.
Yeah.
So this one is down 25%.
Yeah.
At least. It's probably going to be more.
Way more.
So
way more.
When 4 comes out, because every one of these is dropped.
Yeah.
When 4 comes out, what Disney has to figure out is, okay, can we do this again with another 25% drop? And I don't think they can.
Well, if you look at the trajectory of this one, it's not a straight line. This thing is exponential falling. And I think that we're going to see that reflected in the final performance when we get there. And it might even fall off specifically in China, despite the fact that they only collect 20 to 25% of the revenues coming out of China. There is I don't know. Tom, can you think of a best case scenario for this box office?
I mean, as far as bragging rights, maybe, but like at the end of the day, we're seeing the historically sequels are starting to go the way they did in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, Hollywood has relied on the sequel, and that's why they've had Sequelitis, is because for the first time ever, you had the second film started making more money than the first film did. Because otherwise, that was a rare occurrence in film history prior to that, because the problem with sequels are they're always more expensive. You always got to pay the cast a hell of a lot more. You have a lot more expectation on top of it. Generally, you were lucky to bring in 2/3 of the box office, if not half of the box office of the original film. So you kind of had to plan around all of that shit. And then for all of a sudden, between Marvel and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter's and certain other things, all of a sudden Spider-Man being one of the first big ones with Spider-Man 2 and 3, where these sequels started making more money than the original. And they're like, wait a minute, this is a winning formula. Before, it wasn't working so much for us. We had to take risks on a lot of these things. But if we can guarantee that every time one of these movies comes out, we're going to make more and more and more money, well, that's what led to Endgame, right? But now what are we seeing? We're seeing the Avatar films start to fall off from what they were. We're starting to see a lot of these other franchises like Mission Impossible and certain other ones start to fall off from where they were. We're going to start to see the same thing here with Endgame, or with Avengers now that, Doomsday comes out. I think we all are going to be surprised if it does remotely as well as some of the last few Avenger films, or even Deadpool and Wolverine or Spider-Man for that matter. Especially when it doesn't have either of them in it, probably.
Yep. We'll see how Mando does as
another
well.
one. And that's an oddball. Like, how do you assess that one, right? Like, but I mean, the Star Wars films, that was an example of things falling back down the way they used to be back in the 70s and 80s again, where you were just lucky if a sequel made nearly as much as the first one. And the Star Wars films were one of the few exceptions of those movies of that era where the sequels, even though they did make less, still made close to what the original ones did. But go look at every other sequel from Jaws 2 to, any other, they were Ghostbusters 2, right? Like everything from in between there, they were lucky to make a third to half of what the original film did. So I think we're getting back to that era where studios are going to have to back off a little bit on these sequels, be a little bit more picky and choosy. And you can't be spending $200-300 million on no Avatar sequels anymore. That's going to be the other big thing. And I think that has more to do with it than James Cameron. And maybe it could even be that James Cameron's just run out of story, right? Like there's not really much story left to tell here either, I think. I mean, he's already got Earth, Wind, and Fire at this point. What's left?
The biggest sin against this one, though, where it starts is where it ends, yet again. And folks, we have come to the end yet again. Another video of excellence in the can. What a joy it has been to share time with you. We hope you enjoyed it as well. If so, consider clicking that like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. And as always, drop a comment down below. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, so waste not yours. Join a community dialogue today, just on down below. Folks, we are going to say farewell for now, but we will see you back. 4 is more, and that's how many videos we put out every single day here on the Pro Channel. Hope you enjoy them all. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.